Hey everybody, so welcome back. So for today's project, we have a 2005 Jeep Liberty. It's a 3.7 Sport, automatic, 4-wheel drive. And what we're going to do today is we're going to replace the front pads and rotors on this vehicle. What has happened in the last probably month or so, whenever you hit the brake, we get a vibration and a shimmy through the steering wheel. So one of the rotors is warped. So what we're going to do is we're going to essentially walk through the entire process on what you need to do to replace the rotor and pads on your Jeep. This will pretty much apply to any Jeep Liberty, or for the most part any vehicle with front disc brakes. It's pretty much the same process for a lot of these vehicles. So with that being said, why don't we get to it, and let's walk over to the bench and we'll take a review of what you need to do the job. And so let's get started. Alright, so here's the tools that you're going to need to do this job. It's relatively straightforward. You're going to need a little crowbar, then you're going to use that to remove the caliper from the mounting bracket. You need a 3/8 wrench, a 12mm impact socket. That's going to be for the caliper mounting bolts. There'll be a 19mm socket. That's for the lugs. There'll be a 21mm socket. That will be for the caliper mounting bolts. And then an impact gun. You can either use an electric, like the one I typically use, or if you have an air one, you can use that one too. A big dead blow hammer for removing the rotor in the event that it's stuck on the hub, and a wire wheel with on a cordless drill to remove the rust and corrosion from the studs and the face of the hub. A large C-clamp, a bungee cord, and some brake cleaner, and last but not least, a magnetic parts tray if you have one. Again, it's pretty straightforward. Not a lot of tools here. A lot of it is just pretty common stuff. All right, so why don't we go ahead and over to the Jeep and start taking everything apart. All right, so the first thing you want to do after jacking up the car is you want to remove the wheel, and this is a 19mm lug. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove the wheel first. Alright, so now with the wheel removed, we have a little bit more access to the brake assembly. So let's take a little bit more of a detailed shot as far as what we're looking at. Alright, so here we're looking at the disc brake assembly, and essentially there's three components really. You have the rotor itself, you have the caliper, and then you have the caliper mounting bracket. Okay, so the way this thing is attached is, if you look, there's essentially four fasteners, and we'll just look at the two up the top, but essentially it's the same thing on the bottom. On the caliper itself, there's a 12mm bolt which basically attaches to the caliper mounting bracket, and then the bracket which is attached to the knuckle, you have a 21mm bolt. So essentially you have two at the top, and then you have two at the bottom. So what we're going to do first is we're going to remove the caliper mounting bolts, and what we're going to do is we're going to then remove the caliper from the bracket, and we're going to basically put this aside, and then we'll go after the 21 bolt that holds the mounting bracket onto the knuckle. So why don't we go ahead and do that now. Alright, so we went ahead and removed the 12mm bolts from the caliper, and just using the pry bar, we removed it from the caliper mounting bracket. So if you look, there is the caliper assembly, and the brake pads does not come with it. They're actually they're still within the caliper mounting bracket. That's completely normal. Don't worry about that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to just kind of hang the caliper up and out of the way so we can continue on getting the caliper mounting bracket off. And what you want to do is you want to take a bungee cord, attach it to the coil spring, and basically just loop it around the caliper itself so it's hanging, so it's not putting any stress on the hard line or the soft line, which will cause a leak. So why don't we go ahead and go to the next step, and we're going to remove the 21 millimeter bolts that hold on the caliper mounting bracket assembly to the knuckle. So let's do that now. Alright, so we have the caliper mounting bracket off. So one thing you always want to do when you're doing your brakes, there's always a couple of things you need to look out for, and if you don't, this may contribute to poor brake pad wear or stuff along that lines. So what it is on the caliper mounting bracket, what it is, you have these two slide pins, and so what it is, the caliper is designed to float on the rotor back and forth, and what it's designed to do is it's meant to self-centered. And what controls that are these slide pins, all right? So what you want to do is when you're doing a brake job on any car, grab these pins and make sure that they are moving, they're not seized, all right, on both sides, okay? So you always want to check that. If they are seized, all you have to do is just basically remove these rubber boots, and the pins will slide right out. You can go ahead and clean them up, remove any corrosion or anything like that, put them back in, and they should be fine going forward. The next thing you want to do is within the caliper mounting bracket is make sure that the slide clips are in place, because essentially the pads actually move within the caliper mounting bracket itself, and basically the dog ears of the brake pads go in here, and basically they will actually slide back and forth on those clips. So you always want to make sure when you're doing the brake pad assemblies, make sure that those clips are there and then there's nothing missing, because if you don't, what will happen is the brake pad will essentially get hung up and it will get pinched and you will have uneven wear. Right, so the reason I'm saying that is here are the two pads that came out, right, and I don't remember which one was which, but essentially if you look, this one is pretty much worn down to pretty much nothing. It looks like we caught it just in time, right? So that's one side of it, and then here's the other pad, and if you look, this pad pretty much has all its material on the brake pad. If I wanted to, I could probably still use it. These are ceramic pads, and the reason why it looks like I had so much uneven wear on one side is when I initially took the bracket off, this guy was hanging up, wasn't even moving at all. So what I did is I just took it apart and I neglected to film it, and I cleaned it up and I put it back in there, so now it's nice and free, so that should eliminate that issue. Alright, so why don't we go ahead and pop the rotor off, put the new one on, and I'll show you what's involved in that. That's pretty straightforward. Alright, so now what you want to do is essentially remove the rotor. Luckily for us, this one actually is coming right off. There's no issues. But sometimes what will happen is the rotor will actually get stuck on the hub, and it won't come off. So essentially what you need to do at that point is you want to get a big dead blow hammer, and you're going to strike it from the back on both sides. You know, spin the wheel, no, not the wheel, the rotor assembly. So basically you're breaking up the rust on multiple contact points. Just keep hitting it and eventually it will come off. But luckily for us, it's going to come right off. Alright, so what we're going to do at this point is, you know, this is the hub. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a wire wheel and I'm going to clean up all the rust on this just to make it a nice clean mounting point for when it goes on. So if I go do this again in another 2 or 3 years, whatever it is, I'm going to eliminate all possibilities of that rotor sticking onto the hub. So why don't we go ahead and do that now. Alright guys, so the next step, what you need to do as far as in preparation for reassembly is, what you have to do is you have to drive the piston back into the caliper, because what happens is, as the pads wear, the piston comes farther and farther out of the caliper, and if you try to put the new pads on, which are thicker, over the new rotor, you're never going to be able to get it back together. So all you need to do is just grab a C-clamp, and you're going to put it on the on the back of the caliper, and then on the face of the piston. And all you can do is you're going to tighten it up, and you're going to drive the piston back into the caliper. So why don't we go ahead and do that now, and I'll go to the next step. Alright, so what you want to do now is, as part of the preparation before you put the brake rotors on, we have to clean them, because what it is, when they're shipped with a protective film. It's called cosmoline. It's essentially just a rust deterrent, so they don't sit and rust while they're waiting to be purchased. So all you're going to do is you're going to take some brake clean, and then go ahead and spray it on both surfaces, get it nice and clean, get rid of the all the grease on it, and go from there. You can do it on both sides. And that's it. Now we're ready to mount the rotor onto the hub. Alright, so we're in the home stretch of reassembly. From this point, it's pretty straightforward. A little trick, when you're getting ready to put the rotor on, what's going to happen is it's going to want to float around until it's seated on there. So all you have to do is just take a lug nut, tighten it up, and basically it'll hold the rotor nice and flat up against the hub. So next thing you want to do is you're going to basically put the caliper mounting bracket on, put the 21mm bolts back in, and you're going to torque from the spec. I'm going to put the torque spec rating in the description of this video, so go ahead and take a look at that. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to insert the pads into the caliper mounting bracket, and essentially once we do that, we'll be able to put the caliper over the pads and then essentially put that back together. So why don't we go ahead and do that now. Alright, so the pads have been mounted into the caliper bracket assembly. So when you're putting these on, they're, they are somewhat unique, and I say that because when you buy them, basically you're going to have two pads with this clip on it, and what that is a wear indicator. And what will happen is, as the pads get low, what will happen is this will make contact with the rotor, and then you'll get that annoying squealing sound. So essentially that's what that is for. When you go ahead and put your rotors in, make sure you're doing one per side per wheel. All right. So what we have to do now is essentially we just need to put the caliper back onto the bracket and go from there. So why don't we go ahead and do that now? All right. So the caliper has been reattached to the caliper mounting bracket. Everything's been torqued. Again, I'll put the torque specs for the mounting bracket as well as the caliper in the description of the video. So essentially that's it. We're done. This is a pretty straightforward job. It doesn't take that much time or tools. It's relatively straightforward. This process pretty much applies to any car with disc brakes. The fasteners may be a little bit different sizes or something along that line, but essentially it's the same thing. You essentially remove the caliper, then you remove the mounting bracket, remove the rotor, put on the new parts, and essentially you're done. The last thing you have to do is, before you take this for a drive, is before you even put in drive, once you let it down, pump the brakes about 5 or 10 times, because since we drove the piston into the caliper, we need to reseat that, and what you need to do is just pump the brakes, and that'll essentially reestablish the pressure on the brake pads. Because if you don't, what's going to happen is you put in reverse or drive or whatever, and you go to hit the brakes, and if something's behind you or something like that, you may not have any brakes. So again, pump the brakes before you take off, and the first time you do it, you realize that oh shit, you gotta do that. So essentially that's it. This project costs probably about 90 bucks, you know, with both rotors and pads, brake clean, stuff like that. It's fairly inexpensive to do, and it's very easy to do. If there's any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them in the comments box. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you like the video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. If you like what you saw, please subscribe. I would love to have you as part of my community. And as always, thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye.